Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. Currently, we are entering the most important 24 hours that will determine a lot of things. Especially these next 24 hours will determine whether the Russians and Ukrainians are able to settle the conflict peacefully or we are going to face another wave of escalation. As for the current situation, we see that neither the Russians nor the Ukrainians are planning to follow any ceasefire. For example, when talking about Ukraine, during the previous night, the Russians carried out another massive missile and drone strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine. In this video, we can see explosions that took place on the territory of the city of Kiev. The Russians attacked Kiev with multiple ballistic missiles and drones. This is another photo, probably of the same place but from another angle. When talking about the Ukrainians, they did the same. The Ukrainians attacked the territory of the Russian Federation mainly with drones. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation from some period of time to another was publishing additional information regarding work of its air defense system. For example, according to Russian sources, after 7 p.m. of Moscow time, more than 57 drones were brought down by the Russians. The Ukrainians were trying to attack the city of Moscow, the capital of the Russian Federation. This morning, on the 7th of May of 2025, several pro-Russian resources reported that during the previous night, the Ukrainians attacked the territory of the Russian Federation with the use of more than 500 drones. As for now, I'm not sure whether we should trust this information or not, but the Ukrainians this morning published a lot of videos, a lot of photos, a lot of geolocations of consequences of attack that took place during the previous night. A lot of facilities, a lot of military facilities were damaged and destroyed by the Ukrainians. Once again, several pro-Russian resources and several pro-Ukrainian resources reported that Ukrainians used more than 500 drones. Anyway, let's wait and see, but another important thing is that several pro-Russian resources reported that Putin ordered to prepare Oreshnik because the Russians are saying if Ukrainians will ruin or break ceasefire or they make any provocation during the 9th of May and May holidays, the Russians can attack the territory of Kiev with Oreshnik. So let's wait and see what is going to be next. Now let's return back to the line of combat contact. We have a lot of very important updates, and first we're going to talk about the Kherson direction. Basically, we will continue our discussion. Today we got another important article that was published by the pro-Russian source, and in this article was reported that the Russians managed to cross the river of Dnipro in the vicinity of the settlement of Burgunka and to establish control over another territory. So when summarizing everything since the end of April of 2025, the Russians managed to take under control or establish some control with sabotage and reconnaissance groups in this area. The Russians crossed the river of Dnipro and took under control this territory. The Russians improved their positions to the north of Oleshk and established complete control over the settlement of Pridniprovska, something like this. The Russians managed to establish control over the islands in front of the settlement of Kizomys, and the Russians concentrated a critical mass on the Kinburn Spit. As for now, and by the morning of the 7th of May of 2025, we haven't received even a single video that can confirm this, but obviously we believe that this information worth attention. Now let's move further, let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the South Donetsk direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation in the directions of the settlements by the name of Zelene Polye and Novopol. During the previous night, we got additional changes on the map and additional geolocations. This video, for example, was published by the Ukrainian side, and in this video we can see how Ukrainian Presidential Brigade was attacking with FPV drones Russian positions along the line of combat contact. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map. One of the episodes of this video was geolocated exactly in this point. Based on this, we have adjusted the map and we have colored additional tree line in the complete Russian control. Currently, the distance between possible Russian positions and the settlements of Zelene Polye and Novopol is already less than 2.5 kilometers, which means that probably not during the ceasefire, but most likely right after the ceasefire ends, the Russians will continue offensive, and maybe by the 15th of May they will be able to answer both settlements. Furthermore, Russian progress on the ground was confirmed by neutral mappers and by pro-Russian resources. So according to them, the Russians improved their positions, as you can see, significantly. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Novopavlovka or the Dnipro direction. During the previous 24 hours and during the previous night, the Ukrainians were forced to fall back from additional defenses. According to information we have, according to neutral mappers and pro-Russian resources, during the previous night, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. Basically, the Russians secured the settlement of Kotlerovka, and we expect that today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm this information. This is the situation on the ground by the end of the 6th of May, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 7th of May. I'll remind you that these days the Russians are advancing in this direction, and this Russian major offensive operation in the Dnipro direction started somewhere on the 2nd of May of 2025. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 2nd of May. This is the situation by the 3rd of May. The Russians secured the area in the vicinity of Novoovka. By the end of the 4th of May, the Russians answered the territory of Kotlerovka. We have proof with this. And by the end of the 5th of May, the Russians managed to break through along the tree lines in the southern part of the settlement. And by the beginning of the 7th of May, the Russians secured this territory completely. Furthermore, when talking about pro-Ukrainian sources, they have already shown at least 50% of the settlement of Troitska as a contested area or the gray zone. So very likely the Russians are already in the eastern part of the settlement, and the Russians continue advancing further in the western direction with the purpose to enter the last settlement in this area, the village of Goryokhovo. Now let's talk about the settlements of Novosergeyevka, Novoalexandriivka, Uspenovka. As you can see, we have adjusted the map in this area as well. This is the situation by the big end of the 6th of May, and this is by the beginning of the 7th of May. During the previous 24 hours, we have several videos. In this video, for example, we can see how the Russians were trying to cross this river, but the Russians were ambushed by Ukrainian drones and they began bombing them with grenades. So based on this video, yesterday we didn't adjust anything because we had some doubts whether the Russians managed to improve their positions, whether those sabotage and reconnaissance group managed to complete their mission. But today several pro-Ukrainian sources published this video, and in this video we can see how Ukrainians were counter-attacking in the eastern part of the settlement of Sergeyevka using the infantry fighting vehicle. The Ukrainians were attacking positions of the armored force of the Russian Federation. Based on this video we have adjusted the map, and now we have no doubts that the battle for Novosergeyevka is ongoing. The Russians are trying to improve their positions from the east and the western direction, and now we see that the Russians are trying during the next several 10 days, or probably a bit more, a bit less, to answer the territory of Dnipro region in multiple areas. As for the city of Pokrovsk, as you can see, the Russians are bombing and attacking the most southern part. For example, in this video we can see how Russians were attacking positions of the armored forces of Ukraine with flamethrower systems. We expect that after this artillery preparation, the Russians will try to take under control this territory as well. Very interesting video is coming from the southern part of Mirnograd. In this video we can see how Russians were bombing and attacking the most southern part of the settlement with FAPs and with flamethrower systems. We expect that the Russians may try to answer the settlement of Mirnograd in the very near future. I'll remind you that just yesterday we discussed lots of Russian attempts to attack along this entire line of combat contact, and several Russian attempts to attack took place exactly in this area. Now let's move further and let's discuss the most important update. The Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Novoolenivka. Obviously, this was unexpected. This is the video that was published by the Russian side, and in this video we can see how Russians using motorcycles outflanked the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine in this area and took them under complete control. And in the final part of the video we can see a Russian soldier that was waving with the Russian flag. Based on this video, most of the mappers have adjusted their maps in this area. Currently, the village of Novoolenivka is under complete Russian control, and this is very important because now we see that the Russians managed to cut the road N32 from the north and from the south from this company stronghold that is located inside of this area. So we know that the Russians are advancing in the area of Novopavlovka as well, but as for now the situation in this settlement is covered with the fog of war. We don't know for sure what exactly is happening here, but we believe that Ukrainians are no longer able to use this road for evacuation, for supply and support. So we believe that this road either in the complete Russian control or under complete fire control. Anyway, we believe that Ukrainians still have possibilities to support this stronghold using this route of attack. But we expect that the Russians are about to establish complete FPV drone control over this territory, and we expect that during the next probably 72 hours, maybe after the end of the ceasefire or probably today, they will try to attack this company's stronghold from the south and from the north with the purpose to establish complete control over this territory. If the Russians are able to do this, this is going to be a significant victory for the Russians, obviously, and based on this foothold, the Russians will be able to advance further in the northern direction, in the western direction, and in the northeastern direction with the purpose to cut this Kliban-Byksky pocket. Furthermore, several sources confirmed that the Russians also answered the settlement of Alexandropol, which is located in this Kliban-Byksky pocket. Anyway, when talking about this pocket, we see that the Russians reduced their activities in this area. As for now, it's very difficult to understand what is the reason of this, but we expect that after the end of the ceasefire, Russians will resume their attempts to advance in the direction of the Kliban-Byksky water reservoir. Now let's talk about the city of Chasiv Yar. Today we got a very important video that was published by the Ukrainian sources. In this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians to the north of the city of Chasiv Yar. I'll remind you that several days ago, and probably for the previous several days, we've been talking a lot that the Russians improved their focus in this area, and we expected that the Russians would begin their offensive operation with the purpose to maintain their lines along Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. The Russians most likely came to the conclusion that now they need to improve their foothold on the Ukrainian side of this canal with the purpose to concentrate additional forces and critical mass on the Ukrainian side. And today we got first geolocation and first proof that the Russians indeed managed to finish this and to do this. For example, this is the situation by the beginning of the 7th of May, and this is the situation by the end of the 6th of May. The Russians improved their positions in the northern part of the city of Chasiv Yar significantly. Now Ukrainians has less chances to restore control over this territory because now the Russians have a lot of troops there. Now let's move further. The Russians continue attacking positions of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the city of Slavyansk. In this video we can see another temporary deployment point or the warehouse of the 142nd Mechanized Brigade of the armored forces of Ukraine that was destroyed as a result of Geraint strike. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Tyotkino direction, where the Ukrainians the third or the fourth day in a row continue their attempts to cross the border and to establish complete control over this territory. But another day ended with another failure for Ukrainian side. This morning the Russians started publishing lots of videos with destroyed Ukrainian vehicles and equipment along the border. As for now, the Ukrainians probably managed to make some breaches in Russian defense along the border, but as for now they still haven't managed to collect a critical mass on the Russian side. Lots of vehicles, lots of equipment was destroyed by the Russians during the previous night. This is one of the episodes. As you can see, up to 4 vehicles were destroyed, abandoned and damaged by the Russians during another Ukrainian attempt to cross the area. But when talking about all these attempts, there is just one area where the Ukrainians managed to get some results. According to information we have and according to geolocations that were published by the Russians, the Ukrainians managed to answer the settlement of Tyotkina along the street of Chapaeva, and probably the Ukrainians control probably 10 or 20 buildings in this part of the settlement. Let's compare the maps. This is the situation by the beginning of the 6th of May, and this is the situation by the beginning of the 7th of May. So at least this street was taken by the Ukrainians, but obviously this is not enough to announce another media victory. The situation for Ukrainians is very difficult. Less than 24 hours left before the beginning of Russian ceasefire, and we need to understand one important thing. Any Ukrainian provocation, any Ukrainian attack since the beginning of the 8th of May of 2025 can be considered by the Russians as a probably very huge aggression against Russia, and Russians will be completely free to use their Oreshnik system. And most likely the Russians exactly are going to do this, and they want to do this. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, push your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.